Axios reports that Donald Trump will assemble his national security team in the Situation Room tomorrow to talk about more military options against Iran. That is according to two U.S. officials. The president spent much of this weekend posting more threats toward Iran, saying in part the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Joining us, White House correspondent Luke Broadwater, author of Cosmopolitics on Substack, Elise Labott, and longtime Pentagon correspondent and author of Barbara Starr Reports on Substack, Barbara Starr. All right. And Luke Broadwater with the New York Times, in case I did not say that. Let's talk about the president's threats. Luke, I will start with you. He has made threats like this in the past, has not acted on them in recent weeks. What is the actual posture at the White House?
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump for weeks now, actually more like months, has been threatening, terrible actions against Iran, right? He's threatened to blow up the entire civilization. He's threatened to blow up the bridges. He's threatened to blow up all the energy in the country. Again, here we find ourselves again back to this threat posture where he's, talking about annihilating the country of Iran. But everything I'm hearing internally is that Donald Trump doesn't want to really restart this war in a kinetic way, that they know politically it's been quite bad for them. It's unpopular with the American people. The midterms keep getting closer and closer. So if they can't find a way to get out of this without escalating it again, I think it's just going to be reaping negative political implications for the White House.
So Iranian state media is claiming today that U.S. officials, Elise, agreed to suspend sanctions against Iran's crude oil exports. That would be a major change for us in general toward Iran. We're doing that allegedly from the Iranian state media to facilitate talks or to allow them to make this money while talks continue. Is that a hopeful sign that we're going to reach some sort of agreement with Iran?
Well, I'm hearing exactly what Luke is hearing. It's pretty clear the president doesn't want to go back to a full-scale war, and he's trying to get the Iranians into a negotiation. The thing is, the terms on both sides are, not agreeable to the other. The Iranians want to discuss opening the Strait of Hormuz, ending the blockade, and then moving on to the nuclear discussions. And President Trump wants to, start with the nuclear discussions. So they're still in an impasse. And it's really kind of, we're, at a sad space when we kind of believe what the Iranians are saying equally, if not more, than what the president is saying on these kind of Truth Social posts. So I think that if they can get to some kind of negotiation to end the blockade and move into those nuclear discussions, the president would lift those sanctions. And, building on what Luke was saying, there's really no way to get what the president says he wants, which is an end to the nuclear program or some kind of nuclear deal, without a negotiation. The United States, at this point, it's pretty unlikely they're going to go into this major military operation, Katie, to go underground and get that uranium. The only way to get it is a negotiation. And the only way to get into those negotiations is to start with this small step.
So does that negotiation, does that agreement eventually look better or worse than the Obama-Iran deal?
I think it looks pretty similar. The Trump administration asked for a 20-year moratorium on enrichment, high uranium enrichment. The Iranians came back with 5. Then we're talking more about, 10 to 15, which is pretty much what the JCPOA was. I think it's going to look very much the same. Maybe the president can negotiate a few face-saving gestures to say that he got more, but we're really looking at a deal that is very much like the JCPOA, with the added benefit that the president maybe could say that he opened the Strait of Hormuz, which, as we know, was not closed before this war.
Let's talk about what's going on with our troops in Poland. I'm going to play Congressman Don Bacon asking Dan Driscoll, the Army Chief of Staff, about this drawdown, American troop drawdown in Poland.
Do we know if Poland was notified by the secretary?
We don't know.
Well, I already know the answer because they called me yesterday. They did not know. They were blindsided. These are some of our best allies, and they had no idea.
Driscoll's the Secretary of the Army. Sorry about that. Barbara, what's going on here? Thom Tillis was extremely upset with the president, with Pete Hegseth over the weekend. He called it, we'll put this post up on the screen, the careless decision to reduce our force posture in Europe, along with moves by Pete Hegseth and his political henchmen to force out some of our finest general officers, is amateur hour at best and deadly at worst. Explain why Tillis is so upset.
Well, this starts with why is all this happening? Because Donald Trump is not sending Pete Hegseth off the job. He's not firing him. By all accounts, he likes the job that Hegseth is doing. So Hegseth is proceeding with the president's agenda. And that means pulling back from NATO. And it means having that free reign to get rid of generals and top officers, no matter how distinguished their military careers are. And all of them have had distinguished careers. He just simply fires them right out of hand. On the Poland business and also in Germany, the U.S. is drawing down its troops. It's pulling back from well-planned exercises and training. And you have to ask yourself, I think, what benefit is this to U.S. national security? President Trump is firmly in the same place he has always been, that the NATO allies do not contribute enough to their own defense and that the U.S. is supporting them. But things like the Iran conflict show us that the U.S. needs a footprint in Europe. It needs airfields. It needs basing rights. It needs troops to be able to maintain and repair aircraft as they come back. So where this all ends, we'll have to see. But there's no indication Trump or Hegseth are planning to pull back on any of it.
Well, there was a drawdown in Germany, too. So is the Poland drawdown a part of the German drawdown? Luke, what do we know about that?
Well, it seems that Donald Trump is viewing Europe almost as a whole as a negative place for him and his ambitions. He thinks our European allies have not been sufficiently helpful to him. He's constantly criticizing NATO. What I think, if you talk to any sort of military experts, though, what the president may not fully realize is these bases, these troops that are in Europe are helping with the war in the Middle East. So if Donald Trump wants to have more adventurism and more military campaigns in the Middle East, these troops and these bases in Europe are quite helpful to those campaigns. So if we completely draw down from Europe, if we take all of our personnel out of Europe, we may actually be hurting those efforts. So, in some ways, it looks like the administration is trying to punish some of our allies in Europe for some of the things they've said, but we could be hurting ourselves in the process.